Hi everyone, and welcome back to Friendly Tech Chats. Today, announcement is that the 25th of November, both Mikola and I are going to be talking at Kotlin Dev Day, which is going to be organized in the Netherlands, and I think there's also online tickets available. We'll put a link somewhere.
Yes, and it will be in Amsterdam, and as you said, online. And probably we will release this video on the weekend, so it will be just before we will be presenting on that.
Exactly, yeah, that will be perfect. So, given that we will all be talking about Kotlin there, I wanted to bring up a topic that I've discussed at JFall with a couple of the other speakers there, and some of them will also be at Kotlin Dev Day, and that is Kotlin on the way out? Because yeah, you know,
No.
I mean, Kotlin is awesome and it's new, and is it already dying? You know, and I think if you look at the curvature of acceptance, then we're still on the path upwards. Like you see more and more people adopting Kotlin, and I also think that the ecosystem is still growing. But when you look at the vision for the language and the connection it has to the JVM and the way that is developing, I think what you're seeing is that those development paths are becoming more and more orthogonal. So Kotlin is developing in a direction that is less and less aligned with what the JVM is doing. Both.
What do you mean? Do you have examples for that?
Yeah. So first you had Kotlin data classes, which was like the biggest feature, I think, and no typing, for which most early adopters at least switched. And now there is Java records, and they match somehow, and there is actually the at JVM record, I think, annotation you can use to force your data class to be a record.
So you mean here that Java is catching up now with the features?
It's catching up, but it's also developing in a different direction.
Okay, it's diverging.
Yeah, exactly. Like the coroutines versus what Project Loom is doing, and the pattern matching that's coming in Java versus the way that's not really available in Kotlin.
Yeah, that's true, and that is always a danger a little bit with languages like Kotlin. It was also from the very beginning, at least for me, with collections, because at the moment where we started to use Kotlin, we already had some experience with Java streams, and that was a different experience than with Kotlin collections, although in that case we still prefer Kotlin collections.
Yeah, no, yeah, and that's exactly one of these points where the fundamental vision of Kotlin is different than the vision in Java. And since Kotlin is, in the end, well, for most use cases, it's compiled down to bytecode to run on the JVM. That mismatch in vision, I think, is gonna hinder it more and more in utilizing the maximum potential of the JVM.
There are plus sides and downsides. I see a certain plus because if it were going in the same direction and Java would be constantly catching up, at some point it will catch up for the most interesting things, and there would be no more compelling reason to stay on the bleeding edge Kotlin, right? The fact that they are diverging, it actually gives you different flavors, and given the adoption rate, yeah, maybe it's not that huge across the industry, but it's already noticeable. That means there will be this enough momentum to keep the things rolling, I guess.
Yeah, kind of like the ecosystem that Groovy has been in, that it's just so wildly different from the way you develop Java that
although I didn't want to bring Groovy because in my mental model Groovy is almost dead. So
oh yeah, definitely, no, yeah.
So I didn't want to use this example.
Yeah, no, the only reason some people still use Groovy is because they're using an old version of Gradle, I think. I think Kotlin has been at a very advantageous position because it was a newer language with less legacy, so it could pick up and try out all kinds of new things. And I think what Kotlin did really well is not step into the Scala trap of just put all the things in there, but pick out the things that make a cohesive nice to work with language in themselves. But in doing so, I mean, Kotlin was new 4 or 5 years ago. And that means they've innovated on the state 4 or 5 years ago. And I think this is this divergent path. And I think that the major way that most people use Kotlin is on a JVM, and that the JVM is being developed on a divergent path. I think this is the mismatch that it now puts Kotlin at a disadvantage. Now, of course, there's also other uses of Kotlin, like they have like compile to native and compile to JavaScript, and there is of course that Android is Kotlin first, but I'm not sure if all these different targets are an advantage. I mean, they could provide an alternative lifeline.
I think it's understandable why JetBrains and Kotlin community is pushing hard now on multi-platform.
Yes, exactly. Because I think the JVM is moving in a different direction.
Yeah. But okay, what does it mean in practical sense? Is it already time for us to start to move to reconsider going back to JVM?
I think it is indeed almost time to reconsider Java as a JVM language and consider Kotlin as a separate language, and maybe there needs to be a separate dedicated KVM, but maybe Kotlin native is that. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm fine with running with JVM because so far I haven't seen or heard major problems with JVM, with runtime.
No, exactly. I think the just-in-time optimization, yeah, I think the just-in-time optimization that the JVM does is amazing, and I don't. Well, I haven't experienced that my native compiled applications perform better than the JVM based applications. So I'm definitely sticking with JVM. And since that is for me the case, I'm also slightly sad that I don't get to play with the latest features from Java. Because Kotlin doesn't compile down to Java 17 yet. So
okay, then that can be annoying, especially for projects that are in the hybrid mode, probably, where you have some parts of Java, some parts of Kotlin. Although usually it's migration. In my experience, it was migration from Java to Kotlin, but now with your concerns, it might be slightly slowed down and reconsidered. Another case I saw sometimes it was where the Java would be the production code and testing code would be in Kotlin because it's so much more convenient there.
Is that what your talk is going to be about?
Not really, but that was one of the inspirations of my talk.
Right, yeah. It's how Kotlin can make your testing code much nicer.
And that's what I would miss if I go, I guess, now, if I have to go back to pure vanilla Java, because those records and pattern matchings they don't add to me that much. Honestly, it's convenient, but they're not really crucial. The things like nullability, which I don't think it's been solved in Java yet in any sensible way.
Yeah, but as long as your ecosystem contains a significant amount of Java libraries, I mean, like if you're running your tests with JUnit and using assert_j to validate those, then the nullability in safeguards.
Okay, nullability for me on the production side. Okay, if I go to testability, for me these are functions with named parameters and defaults, and DSLs are the most important. Also, smaller things like multi-line string literals with variable interpolation that make some simple inputs very much easier.
Java has at least multi-line strings these days.
But without the variable interpolations, which kills 90% of the usage.
No, wholeheartedly agree. That string interpolation is awesome.
What my concern with Kotlin is maybe not that much yet about those diverging paths. It's still okay, interesting to see how it will It's more about the complexity of libraries and idiomatic approaches and compatibility between each other. And that's why I'm starting to see a little bit flashbacks with Scala when I'm playing with Skater for my fakes for tests. And then if I go to try to click through to Skater code, then I completely lost instantly with everything parameterized, everything is in the configuration. There are lots of DSLs and nice hacks that make your life easier when you know what you're doing and you're configuring the application. But if you're trying to figure out what is happening there, sometimes it's not that easy. In my experience, maybe it's just me. And I see some features are proposed to bring it closer to Scala with providing multiple contexts to those receivers, which might be cool, and I already know the ways I would probably use it, but it scares a little bit in the sense that will not get the situation where some libraries you will not be able to understand at all what's happening there.
Right, so what you have is then a receiver that has multiple classes it lives on, essentially.
Yes, it has multiple classes. Yeah.
I see how that can be useful for a DSL, but I also see how then you have no clue what this refers to, because this actually refers to multiple things.
Yes. Then we have the projects like Arrow. That's my favorite thing to play, as in how cool it is, how cool things can be, but how difficult is it for me to switch from normal way of programming to Arrow way of programming, and especially to live with code bases where both are mixed. Yeah, that's...
Yeah, to be honest, if you want to use Arrow, you should probably just still use Scala, I guess.
Yeah, but Scala is probably on the way out as well.
So yeah, no, even further, Scala is way past on the way out.
So that might be actually a potential for growth for Kotlin. Maybe the falls from Scala with more Scala-like features added to Kotlin will start to reconsider Kotlin, and they will have some population drift from those niches.
I think if you put more Scala features in Kotlin, then maybe you're gonna get a separate population drift back to Java.
Well, we already have facing some risk of fragmentation with multi-platform,
virtual threads,
basically.
With platform. Yeah, exactly.
Because it's not for everyone, and for some it's important, but then you have a slightly different approach. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
I'm quite curious in which way it will be developing, but I think that there's warning signs on the wall, and I think it's up to JetBrain to find the right way to develop the language in such a way that it stays relevant in the future. And maybe this is indeed with a different way of programming on the JVM, or maybe this is a path into a separate language that does multi-platform right. Still, I'm very skeptic on the concept of multi-platform.
And maybe I will just finish up with the last reason why I am not that happy maybe with Kotlin, and why going back to Java is a little bit more compelling. It's the performance of compilation, especially with IntelliJ, with running tests on slide and so on. And I don't have a scientific proof here, but from the field, from the people who in my area talking about this, it feels like with Kotlin you are really losing a lot on the responsiveness of development, which is very sad for me, because I am always advocating and supporting the TDD approach with quick tests, and I see that people around me that have to switch back from the interactive test running from time to time, run all the tests. And in my experience also, I noticed that sometimes, even though we were promised that the performance will be improved, and maybe there are improvements, I guess, but it's still kind of not that enough. And I see that when I'm starting to use Kotlin, a little bit more advanced features, a little bit more DSLs, then my test files very quickly become too slow for IntelliJ to render properly all the assertions, all the warnings, and painful to work. Sometimes I can work this around by splitting files into smaller. Maybe it's even a good idea, but I'm not really liking to be forced by the performance.
No, exactly. Like IDE performance should not be a reason to split up classes.
Yes, and that's my concern, especially since I remember before the lockdown go to I think 2019 or 18, it had been already talked about this, and JetBrains promise it will be sorted out, but it's not there yet.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I actually noticed this as well. No, yeah, so I'm quite curious to hear what others think of this. Is Kotlin on the way out, or are we just out of our minds, and is Kotlin gonna be the biggest thing ever? Is JetBrains totally in control and doing all the right things, or is it actually, or will it maybe become its own ecosystem that lives separately from the JVM? What do you think? Let us know in the comments, and
meanwhile,
subscribe. Yeah.
And meanwhile, I'm staying with my Kotlin because.
Oh yes, exactly.
I'm not going anywhere yet.
Everything I've been programming, well, not everything, but most of the things I've been programming these last couple of years is Kotlin, but I think halfway next year I'm probably trying a Java first service again.
Oh, interesting.
Maybe Java 18. We'll see.
Okay.
All right.
Subscribe, like,
yes,
dislike,
do that,
comment. The most important
comment. Because we like interaction. Woo. And check out our talks on Kotlin Dev Day, which is coming up the 25th of October. If you Google Kotlin Dev Day Amsterdam or something like that, I'm sure you'll find it. But we'll also put a link in the
We definitely will put a link.
All right. Bye-bye.